In the previous video, we went over how ProKennex became the world's largest tennis manufacturer and discussed some of their early offerings. And in this video, we're going to start going into their more in-depth offerings. Welcome to Retro Rackets Rediscovered, the YouTube series where we find old tennis rackets at thrift stores, revisit the history of them, and test them out on the court. So in front of me here, we have the racket that got me into collecting all these old tennis rackets. This is the ProKennex Silver Ace. I was introduced to this racket as my dad owns one, and I borrowed it one day. It felt great hitting on the court, nice and solid, and much nicer than the Walmart racket I owned at the time. So eventually, through some thrifting, I came across one of my own. I paid, I want to say $8 for this one. Alright, so let's take a closer look at this one. The black ace we discussed in the previous video came out in the 1980s. This racket comes around 1982. This racket has a very small head by today's standards, and it's got an interesting, as you can see here, it's got a flat bridge here, and the beam itself is very thin. Thin beam rackets, this is a characteristic you're going to see on many rackets from the early 80s up until around the late 80s and early 90s. So this and the other thin beam rackets, they're perfect for slicing, and they are very good at it. And although you think a frame like this, being as small as it is, lacks power, it's very heavy. It comes in at around 12.6 ounces, and it's solid. You can plow through the ball pretty well, like this thing is a club almost. This frame is composed of 80% graphite and 20% fiberglass, and it's got a foam core. The composition of this one is the same as the Wilson Pro Staff, but it lacks the Kevlar that is within that frame. ProKennex produced this racket in both Taiwan and in Japan, and I recently came across one that was made in Japan, but the racket itself was in terrible shape and the strings are broken, and I couldn't bring myself to bring that home. It was not good. Now this racket in particular has been restrung by someone. As you can see, this green string is not stock. So we're going to go take it out to the tennis court, test it out, and see what we think of it. So now you've seen the Silver Ace, we're going to be moving on to the other aces later in the series. So be sure to hit subscribe, and see you in the next Retro Rackets Rediscovered video.